Hey everybody, it's Rob. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about creating a warband for Frostgrave. Now before we dive into this too far, I'm going to go ahead and do my proverbial hit you up for a subscription, hit that notification bell, and please give us a like, because that's how we help circulate the videos to the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you would like to communicate with me more, you can find me at Rob's Game Group on Facebook, all one word, and I'll put the link in the description. So, in one of my previous videos, I talked about why I liked Frostgrave so much, and skirmish games in general. In this one, we're going to start looking a little more in depth into building a warband. Now, Frostgrave is a very heavy narrative game, a lot of storyline to the scenarios and what's going on. So you want your warband that you're playing through a campaign in Frostgrave to be memorable and be something you like. Well, this gives you a chance, like I mentioned in that video, to collect models that you might not otherwise collect. Maybe they're models from another line that you think are cool, but you don't really have a use for. However, with Frostgrave or other skirmish games, but this is primarily I'm talking about Frostgrave here, it gives you a chance to collect those models and build a warband. You can get as creative as you want to. You can write up a little backstory for what drew your wizard to come to Frostgrave and hire a crew to go in, or you can just build him, start playing the game, and let the scenarios tell his story as it unfolds. Remember that races don't matter in this game, so you can use any race. You can do what I've done, and my warband is all dwarven miniatures, each one hand-picked for a specific job in the warband. But you can also just pick miniatures you like. You could have a mixture. Dwarves, elves, goblins, humans, whatever. If you like the mini, you just pick the mini, paint it up, put them in your warband, because you can make up whatever story you want to for why they're together, or maybe it's literally they were just who the wizard hired. So yeah, mixing races or going straight elven warband, skaven warband, goblin warband, human warband, whatever. The race doesn't matter. It's all the aesthetic and what you like. And I've known that for a long time, but it really drew me back into it. Again, I've been watching a lot of videos over on DM James' page, and my bro over there is doing some amazing work with miniatures, not just for Frostgrave, but for Oathmark and some other stuff. But those are the ones that really caught my attention and got me into looking back into playing Frostgrave again. So anyway, with all of that in mind, the first thing we need to do here is we need to look at miniatures. And again, pick what miniatures you want, because unlike any other place, this is specifically one of those spots in miniature gaming where the rule of cool is what matters. You think a miniature is cool? Find a way to fit him in your warband, paint him up, put him on the table. Simple as that. Then we start getting into the nitty-gritty of it. What separates, or how do you build your warband, and then how do you make yours different from the next guy? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to choose a wizard. And I have my unpainted, because I haven't gotten around to it yet, dwarf wizard here. Try to get some detail for you. A little dwarf Gandalf looking guy. But that's who I chose for my wizard. I do have my apprentice, because from something else she was already painted. But his female apprentice, because diversity. And I really like the model. But you pick your wizard first, not the apprentice first, just the wizard, And then when you pick the wizard, you're going to pick his school, his spells, you'll get his stat line, and then you are given 400 gold crowns to hire soldiers to fill out your warband. So let's look at choosing a wizard. It's a new book. It keeps wanting to close on me constantly. Creating a wizard. So what separates the wizards from each other? Well, they're schools of magic. There are 10 schools of magic in the main book, and the wizard that you choose will have a little blurb, about a paragraph or so under it, kind of describing the wizard. Then it'll have a thing talking about they're also known as, symbols related to them, and then the schools that are aligned, neutral, or opposed to them. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. Let's look at the Chronomancer, which is one of my favorites. So Chronomancers they use magic to manipulate time itself. As the youngest branch of magic, it is less developed and less understood than any of the others, and thus potentially the most dangerous. Chronomancers tend to be gamblers and risk takers, those who prefer a quick path to power. They have no specific style of dress, although they tend to like outfits that project a sense of power and often carry an intimidating weapon, even if they have little skill in using it. Given the powers they wield, Chronomancers are just as likely to appear ancient as eternally youthful, and some may display elements of both, such as a young face and an old body. Chronomancers are also known as time riders. The symbols related to them are hourglasses and wheels. Now and that's it, and then each school is going to have schools that are aligned with it, neutral to it, and opposed to it. And spells you choose from those schools will have modifiers to cast them depending on how closely related to your school they are. So the spells that are aligned with the Chronomancer are the Elementalist, the Necromancer, and the Soothsayer. Neutral schools to the Chronomancer are the Illusionist, the Sigillist, the Summoner, the Thaumaturge, and the Witch. And the opposed school to the Chronomancer is the Enchanter. And we're going to run through those real quick. I'm not going to read each one, but I'm just going to tell you the 10 that are in here. You have the Chronomancer, the Elementalist, the Enchanter, the Illusionist, the Necromancer, Sigillist, Soothsayer, the Summoner, Thaumaturge, and the Witch. So then you're going to choose spells, and the spells are all listed in the book, and they even have a handy thing where you can either print out or scan and print out cards for the spells. Each wizard starts the game with 8 spells. 3 spells must come from the wizard's own school of magic. So you pick 3. So if I'm doing the Chronomancer, I pick 3 Chronomancy spells. Then 1 spell must come from each of the 3 aligned schools of magic. So my 3 that are aligned, I would then pick 1 from each of those. The final 2 spells can be selected from any of the 5 neutral schools, but they have to come from each from a different school. They can't take 2 from the same school, and that gives you your 8 spells. You can never start the game with a spell from your opposing school, though there are ways to pick up spells from the opposing school later. When a spell is selected, write its casting number in the space next to it on the wizard sheet or piece of paper, whatever you're using. For starting wizards, this number will be the same as the base casting number and listed in the spell's description, plus the penalty if the spell is outside of their school. So when you're casting a spell, you're trying to you're rolling a d20 and you're trying to beat whatever the casting number on the spell is. An average casting number on a spell is 10, so let's just take that for instance. So if I'm casting a Chronomancer spell, then, and it's a casting value of 10, then I'm just rolling and I'm trying to beat a 10 with a d20. But if I'm casting a spell from one of the aligned schools that I have, like Elementalist, Necromancer, or Soothsayer, it has a +2 because it's aligned. So that spell now needs a 12 or higher. A neutral spell is a +4, so it needs a 14 or higher. And of course, casting from an opposed school is a +6. So if I had access to an opposed school, it would be a 16 or higher. And that's if the base spell is a 10. Let's see. Your stat line. You have a particular number of stats. Hold on just a second. So you have a stat line for your wizard in the book. And you have M for move, F for fight, S for shoot, A for armor, W for will, and H for health. Move is exactly what it sounds like. You can move that many inches. Fight. This is the figure's ability in hand-to-hand combat and its ability to avoid missile fire. Shooting is obviously for shooting, but does not affect spells. Armor is how much physical protection the figure is wearing, including armor, shields, magical protection. It also includes natural armor from certain creatures. Will is the figure's determination, courage, and ability to resist spells. And health is their hit points, how many hits they can take before they die. All the wizards start out with the same stat line. What makes them different is the spells they choose starting out. So you have your wizard, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have the option to hire an apprentice. Now you got that 400 gold crowns we talked about. Well, you don't have to have an apprentice. It is optional. It is a mistake to go without one because it basically cuts you out of an extra magic phase if you don't have an apprentice. And no magical casting whatsoever if you outside of just your wizard. So you want to have the apprentice, plus he can fill in and take over the warband if your wizard dies. Now, the apprentice is going to know the exact same spells that the wizard knows, so you don't have two separate spell lists. It's the same spells, and his stats are going to be exactly the same as the wizard's, except his fighting, his will, and his health are 2 less. So if the wizard has 14 health, then the apprentice has 12. So on and so forth. As the wizard gets better and levels up, basically, the apprentice gets better and levels up. So he's like your wizard, just a little bit lesser value, or lesser ability. Now, the thing is, you only have 400 gold coins, or gold crowns, to buy your warband with, and the apprentice is 100 right off the bat. So now you're down to 3 after you buy him. Well, then we get into the soldiers that you can buy. And in the main book, they have the soldiers split into 2 separate lists. Standard soldier table and the specialist soldier table. Specialist soldiers obviously are better armed, better armor, have better stats. Now the rule with them is your warband can have up to 10 people total. Your wizard and your apprentice take up 2 of those slots. Not taking an apprentice does not give you an extra slot for soldiers. So you have 8 slots for soldiers. You can have as many standard soldiers as you want, but if you start getting specialist soldiers, you can only have 4 of them. And you can't exceed your point cost, which you now have 300 left after buying the apprentice. So in the standard soldier table, the first 2 that you have, they did change this from the first edition, the thug and the thief. They're free. So you can take as many of them as you want up to your limit of 10 in your warband. And that's fantastic because it was really irritating pain for those in first edition because basically they're not really good fighters or anything. They're kind of quick. The best thing they were useful for was to grab treasure and run it, because that's what you do, is you grab the treasure and you have somebody run it off the table. So having guys that you didn't pay points for be able to do that is fantastic, because once they're off the table, they don't come back into the game. They're busy securing the treasure on the wizard's wagon or whatever, but they don't come back. So having some fast guys that are fleet of foot that can get out there and get their hands on some treasure and run it off a table edge and score you some points is great, and the fact that you don't have to pay for them is even better. The rest of the stuff on the standard table is a warhound, regular infantrymen, men-at-arms, or women-at-arms, an apothecary. Now let's look at the specialist table. You have an archer, a crossbowman, treasure hunter, tracker, knight, templar, ranger, barbarian, and a marksman. And they're progressively more and more expensive. So like an infantryman from the standard table costs 50 gold. Men-at-arms cost 75, and so does an apothecary. We start at 75 over here on the specialist list, with the archer and the crossbowman both costing 75. The treasure hunter and tracker, 100 gold pieces apiece. The knight and the templar, 125 apiece. Also the ranger is 125, the barbarian's 125, and the marksman's 125. And on this chart, it gives you their stats. They have a stat line just like the wizard, and then it gives you what items they have. Like the archer comes with a bow, a quiver, a dagger, light armor. And the templar comes with two-handed weapon and heavy armor. This is my templar for my dwarf army. Well, you can see him there, but he's a bad looking little dude, or he will be when I get him painted. So that's what you spend the rest of your gold on, and they come with their equipment that's in the notes for free. They each have a slot that you can put a magic weapon or a magic item on later on, but starting the game out, that's what they get. So once you've hired your soldiers, you're done. You're ready to enter the ruins of Frostgrave looking for treasure, and that takes us into gameplay. However, that is another video entirely. So I hope you enjoyed this, and that's all I've got on this one. We have just created a simple warband. As you can see, there's not much to it. It goes pretty quick. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. And until next time, good gaming and good luck.